and we say this all the time, that the importance of reading these stories isn't necessarily to get the history or your autobiographical notes, right? What is it you hope is the biggest takeaway of reading these stories, these family stories, to the reader, to the new NHIer?
That if you take a close look at life and you become cognizant of your journey, that you have in your makeup multiple journeys that you've taken, some related to the opposite sex, some related to school, some related to childhood, some related to brotherhood, or to a sister, or to an aunt, or to a job, or to employer, or to whatever, being on your own, making mistakes, having small victories, large victories. All of us are composites of journeys. Now, in those journeys, we encounter particular social forces that are not of our making. A war is something we didn't make. I had to deal with Vietnam. That was my journey into being drafted and thinking I was going to go lose my life in a foreign country because I had already lost one brother. I was now my turn to lose my life. That's how I saw it. Or growing up as a 12-year-old and 13-year-old and reading about the Korean War. And my journey was keeping up with where the American troops were all the time on the 38th parallel or Pusan, down by the very end of that peninsula, losing the war to the North Koreans and the Chinese, or listening to the stories of my cousins who were actually in the jungles of Japan and in the streets of France, or being parachuted, 50 miles behind enemy lines at night to deal in a war that they didn't understand why they were there. They were there because they were Americans, whatever that meant, and they were there to take care of their duty to America, whatever that belief was. And then I listened to the stories of my Uncle Steve, who was in World War One. And so I was able to sit down and listen and experience through the ears and the stories of other people what these wars were about, or I was able to experience racial discrimination, which is something that I had nothing to do with. I didn't create it. I didn't create wars. I didn't create low salaries. There are a lot of social forces out there. I didn't create polio. There were a lot of things that I had to experience that were in my outer world that affected me personally. And some teachers were good teachers, some teachers were great teachers, and some teachers were horrible teachers. And then there was the experience of sports and all of those things. The experience of death in my family. I had nothing to do with the death. It happened. It occurred. I had an uncle who got killed. I had a brother who got killed. I had granny who got ill and died. I had people who died of cancer, people who died of other health issues. And so everybody is able to, if you can reflect on your life journeys and then ask yourself questions like, what did I learn? What was going on at the time? What was the lesson? What do I gain from it? What could have I avoided? What were things that were truth and some that were merely perceptions and not truth? And if you begin to become analytical about those special and important events in your life, then you begin to understand yourself in a way that really humbles you, but it really frees you at the same time. It humbles you because it happened and you survived and you did well. Like, give an example, going to Southwestern and waking up the next day and showing up with my little Magnolia way of wearing clothes with khaki pants and my shirt on the outside with long sleeves, and everybody was wearing Weejuns and Hui jeans and whatever they wore at Southwestern. I go, they don't even dress like me, man. And I thought they were wrong and I was right. But I will never forget as I was standing outside of Mood Hall and going, what did I do? Because I just came in the middle of the night and went to school on the Friday before, got in a dorm, was given a dorm with this guy named Alan Trumper. I'll never forget that because he was not a very hygienic person. Putting a shower in Monday morning to meet my coach. I was going to meet him, so I was standing waiting for him outside the dorm and thinking I was in a totally different world. But I did well in that world eventually. I adapted and I did well. And I still had cousins in that world that were all my cousins. I said, not all of them, but some were the gardeners there. And so the girls would say, who are those people? I said, well, they're my cousins. And they all wore the custodian green outfits and they hugged me and they were all up in the stands watching me play basketball. And
Yeah.
when you ask yourself, wasn't that wonderful? And let me tell you what it means to me today in the year 2020. I still have those cousins. I still go see them in Georgetown and they're in their 80s and some of them have died somewhere. They all call me primo and they're all very proud of me. And the girls that are no longer there, I've never seen them again. They were going to be permanent to my life. These other people were temporary. So I was always going to honor those people who were going to be permanent to me. And so third reality allows you to decipher, what that journey is and understand your journey and take joy in the fact that you've done really well. I mean, given the forces that I had to contend with, or you have to contend with, or your parents have to contend with, you've done pretty damn well. And your wife has done pretty damn well. Given the circumstances and the forces surrounding you, things you had nothing to do with, you've done very well. And you have a child you're going to do even better for. Love that picture with her with Tino and
Kai Money.
Kai Money and going, this is so cool. This is for the history books.
Yeah.
And I just think that third reality allows you to not get overwhelmed by the condition that smothers other Latinos and kills them and kills their spirit and discourages them. Third reality allows you to appreciate who you are and the value you represent to yourself and to your family and people you love and the work you want to do in the community. It's the alternate. It's not giving up on my culture and my language and being something I will never be. I will never be white. I will never be mainstream. I don't hate them. I will never be that. That's not a world I like. That's not a world I choose to be in. I will interface with it as I have to, but it's a different world. It's not me. And I have the right to choose my world and form my world and follow the rules of the world that I create for myself. That's my third reality. And enjoy the hell out of it. That's why that book is so important. Because if you will notice at the end of the final chapter says, you're a child with a crayon in your hand. What world are you going to paint for yourself? That's the role of authorship. At 80 years old, I painted a pretty good stuff because I'll say it right now and I'll say it till I die. I've always had success in my life, always. From ping pong champ at the park to canica champs playing marbles with my friends, to being a wrestler in Junior Olympics, to being a basketball player, to being a college star, to being a rock and roll guy, to being an executive in government, to being the founder of an organization that I love. I've always allowed myself the opportunity to reflect on my journey and learn from that journey and be successful as a result of that journey by my rules and bring people with me, benefit others as well as I'm enjoying my life.
Well, thank you very much. And again, this is one of several different conversations about different themes and topics and patterns that emerge throughout these books that you've been gifting to the world and ready for the third one.
I think the challenge for us as an organization is how do you make that lesson possible for other kids? How do you introduce that sense of freedom of authorship? How do you do that? Because I think today's kids are more submerged than ever before. I think they're captive of so many multiple influences. And I think they're under so much stress. I mean, I brag about being a ping pong champ. Well, I used to play ping pong 3 and 4 hours a day. Tell me a child that's able to go do that with his friends today.
Yeah.
I used to go shoot baskets until 11 o'clock midnight. Tell me a kid that does that today. In other words, I was allowed, as a result of being a kid that loved my parents and who loved me back, I was given freedoms because they knew I was going to take care of myself. So, and I was going to hang out with people that were good people. I wasn't going to hang out with some fool. I just wasn't going to do it, no matter what. I respected them, but I wasn't going to hang out with them.
I remember a parent told me one time at a NHI meeting, and it's, now that I have a kid, it's even funnier. And I remember he tells the parents, NHI is the only way you can pick your kids' friends. He's like, because I know that when they're around other NHIers, smart kids, good homes, ambitious, tenacious. I mean, very forward. They're probably talking about which of the 5 top schools they all want to go to. And
Success rubs off.
Yeah, it does.